Hello, this is Dave Sugarbaker, and today is the first Sunday in July. This is the 7th of July in 2024, and I have something about the law. First, the most famous part of the law, taken from Exodus 20th chapter, and this is a digest of what it says there about the Ten Commandments. Then God spoke all these words: I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And lastly, the 10th, you shall not covet. So this is a digest of what the Ten Commandments are all about. Remember Mel Brooks playing Moses? He comes down with 3 tablets, each with 5 commandments on them, and he's juggling them to keep from dropping one. And he says, listen, I've got 15 commandments from God. Listen to me. And then he drops one of the tablets and it breaks into 1,000 pieces. And he looks for a minute. He says, oi. And he says, listen, 10. I got 10 commandments from God. The Louisiana legislature recently passed a law requiring the 10 Commandments to be displayed in all classrooms in the state from kindergarten through graduate school. It's not hard to figure out that the 10 Commandments is a religious document, in that the first 4 commandments deal with how wandering Hebrews were able to relate to their God, who had rescued them from slavery in Egypt. As a proponent of the separation of church and state, I suggested to anybody who would listen to me that we should reinforce the Louisiana law to put the 10 Commandments in every classroom in its original form in Hebrew. I'm sure the Louisiana legislature wants thousands of its students to decide to become Jewish. In fact, the books of Moses, the Torah, set out 613 commandments. There are 248 positive commandments, and that is, you shall, and there are 365 negative commandments, you shall not. The Torah outlines the laws of a now ancient Jewish civilization. We can't assume that since the 613 laws came from God, that we should all conform to the same rules of conduct for our society today. The Louisiana rationale is that the 10 Commandments are the foundation of law that has evolved over succeeding centuries. Louisiana says, oh, this isn't about religion. This is about the history of jurisprudence. This is to teach our students respect for the law. And if that is so, then how about posting the Sumerian code of law in classrooms, since it was written 1,000 years earlier than the law of Moses? It's interesting that at the same time that Louisiana was trying to increase students' respect for the law, the Supreme Court ruled that our nation's leader should not be constrained by laws that apply to everybody else. So what is the law? One definition is that it's a system of rules which a particular country or community recognizes as regulating its actions, the actions of its members, and which may be enforced by the imposition of penalties. According to Jacob Bronowski, cities first became possible because of a mutation in wheat, which made the plant hold on to all of its ripening kernels until harvest. This made farming a viable option as opposed to hunting and gathering, and farmers produced surplus grain, and the surplus made cities possible. With the rise of cities beginning in the Fertile Crescent perhaps 6,000 years ago, we humans needed rules about how to get along in close proximity. In some cities, the laws were imposed by tyrants or warlords. In Israel, God was the lawgiver and the judge. And in other places, laws evolved from the community itself, as in the city-states of Greece. For us human beings, though, to live together, we needed the law. So let's take a closer look at the Ten Commandments. They divide into two groups, 6 that deal with human interaction and 4 that deal with our relationship with God. Summarized, the first 4 say, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. So the commandments say, in a way, be monotheistic. God is God, period. No other gods. No graven images. God is the lawgiver and the judge. So don't misuse God's name or throw it around casually. And yes, keep the Sabbath holy. Treat it differently. It's not just any old day, it's a day for worship. So that's roughly the first 4 commandments. And the last 6 are about how we interact with each other. Honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet. The last 6 don't need a lot of explanation. They're pretty straightforward. No equivocation here. Do this, don't do that. The 10 Commandments and all of the other 603 laws of the old Mosaic system presume that all human beings are under the law. There's a dramatic story of King David breaking the law by sending Bathsheba's husband to the front lines of the latest war so that she could become a marriageable widow when he was killed. The prophet Nathan confronts David with his transgression, and things don't go well for David after that. Wouldn't it be great if all the law could be summed up in a few words or a few sentences? Wait a minute. Jesus did just that. At one point, his political enemies asked him what they thought was a trick question. What is the greatest commandment of the 613 commandments in the Mosaic Law? And the point was, from their perspective, whichever one Jesus chose, they would fault him for not emphasizing some other equally important commandment. And Jesus answered this way: love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's the first 4 of the Old Testament commandments summed up. First 4 of the 10 commandments. And the second, Jesus said, is this: love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that picks up the last 6 of the 10 commandments. Good summary. So thank you for your attention and your time. If you find value here, I hope you'll pass it along, and stay safe.